Mike Tomlin has stepped down as the Steelers head coach. It's a huge day in Steelers history and an end of an era. We're going to break it all down here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter here with Alan Saunders. Going to break it all down and what comes next in what's probably going to be a fast-paced coaching search for the Steelers. All here. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And a reminder that the Locked On Steelers podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network in the world. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Alan Saunders. He's back from SteelersNow.com. And Alan, what a whirlwind of, is it 24 hours yet? I don't know. 36 hours.
Not even.
What is that? It's just, I don't even, 12 hours. It's been an insane run. We went from being up all night at Acrisure Stadium covering the end of the Steelers season to waking up. You went to the locker room. I had meetings at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette I had to attend to, so I wasn't able to be in the locker room. And then shortly after that locker room closed, the Steelers called a meeting, and Mike Tomlin announced to his team he would be stepping down. That, of course, then goes out into the news world and shocks everyone. Shocks, I think, the world in just the fact that it happened. But as you noted when we were talking before, it's not ultra surprising. It does, there was a question, would Mike Tomlin stick around? We both kind of talked about the Steelers were never going to fire Mike Tomlin, but if it was going to happen, if his era was going to end in any time soon, it was going to have to be his call, and apparently it was, Alan.
Yeah, I mean, I had talked a lot this year. I feel like probably on here, but certainly on Steelers Afternoon Drive and other places about. I felt very sure the Steelers weren't going to move on from Mike Tomlin. That Art Rooney wasn't going to fire a coach that won his division, that won 10 games. It's just not what he's all about as an owner. But I did wonder if this year was going to be different for Mike Tomlin in terms of his own decision. Obviously, Mike hasn't made any public statements about why he decided to make the choice to step down today. But, I think it certainly has to do with, there was some reporting out there, I believe it was from Josina Anderson and from Jeremy Fowler, about a feeling of maybe not necessarily being appreciated. And I don't get the sense that was like, how dare you question, what the job I've done or things like that. I just think there is a part of this job where, hey, like if the fan base doesn't want you anymore, and they made that abundantly clear, and not only did they make that, like it's been pretty clear for those of us who are waiting amongst the fan base on a daily basis for a while now, but when they take it to your place of work and they chant your name and say they want you fired, it feels different. You feel less wanted there. And I do think that's something that was different about this year. I also just think his kids are gotten older. He's sort of an empty nester at this point, and there's nothing necessarily tying him to Pittsburgh in a way that would have been different when he was a younger man. And so I think you can pile a lot of that up, and I think it was there was a chance. There was always a chance this was going to happen this year, and I hope that I did, but I tried to couch all those discussions with that I always felt like maybe this could be something that could happen.
I think a big point there too is about, like, I've said this on a few shows that I've already been on talking about this, but like the thought here, Alan, I was a senior in high school when Mike Tomlin got hired, by the Steelers. I remember, there's just this feeling like back then that, like, when Bill Cowher was going to CBS, I was like, oh, he'll be back in coaching, and that never happened. And I just remember how, when you think about how long ago that was, and how, I remember people being like, oh, his kids are going to Linden Elementary. And like, I used to walk past Linden Elementary all the time, and just like all the senses of like, just like, man, like it's been a lifetime. Like his kids have gone from elementary school kids to either in college or out of college. And I think that is, that paints part of the picture here, is that he's been here a long time. He's given it all he's got. And hey, and again, he gets to go out on his own call, right? He gets to say, you know what, I'm gonna call it before anyone else does. I won my Super Bowl, been to 2, got my 8th division title, been able to, we made the playoffs. It didn't end the way I wanted, but I'm gonna go out on my own and then figure out what I want to do. Because that's the other thing right now, is that now he gets to step away. He gets to, there's rumors about him going on the TV route. I personally just knowing Mike Tomlin and just hearing him talk for years, I feel like he's too much of a competitor to stay away for too long. But I don't know, as a kid, I felt the same way about Cowher with I was just like, man, that guy's gonna go right.
TV schedule's nice.
And a lot less people yell at you to get fired when you're working on TV.
That TV schedule's nice, the money's okay. I don't think that Mike Tomlin wants to do TV forever. Maybe he would do it for a year. Right. I don't get the sense that he is really that interested in it, but sometimes you don't know that you're going to like something until you do it. I think that was the case with Cowher. I don't think he intended to do TV. I think he just liked it. I agree with you, though. I feel like Mike Tomlin is enough of a competitor and also young enough and had enough success that he will get another really good opportunity if he wants one. It's not like he's going to have to scrape the bottom of the barrel to beg for another head coaching job. Right. If he wants one, he'll get a good one. I think very similarly to Mike Vrabel, who was another coach that took 1 year off and then went back into it. Sean Payton, same thing, took 1 year off and went back into it. And those guys have had a lot of success. So I don't know why a team wouldn't be willing to go pick up Mike Tomlin, and we'll see what happens for him in the future. I like I said, I really don't see a big, long TV career, but who knows? Things change.
Yeah, maybe he's like, this is pretty good. I just get to talk and I just get to give my opinion and say who I think should get fired. That's pretty crazy.
Matt Ryan just got hired by the Falcons, so there's a seat next to Cowher available.
How about CBS if Cowher and Tomlin were that would be nuts. I want your thoughts on this, Alan. How much of this was more premeditated than this being a reaction to how that playoff loss happened? Because again, this wasn't a playoff loss like a lot of the others where they were down 28 points in the third quarter or down 14 or 21 in the first half. This was neck and neck until about 8 minutes to go. Then they get that sack fumble touchdown, and then the Texans widen the lead with 2 quick scores. Do you feel like this was something that he's kind of had in his back pocket and he was like, unless something crazy happens, this is probably it?
Yeah, I think so. You don't make that decision in 12 hours.
Right.
I mean, just period. He had already told the guys after the game that they were going to come in the next day to meet. And that was immediately after the loss. And that is unusual for an end of season compared to the way things have gone before. And so he obviously knew right away that was going to be the last one. But he kept it close to the vest. I took a video of him coming off the field. Because you remember, were you there in 2020, Pouncey's last game?
No, I wasn't there. I was at Channel 11 that night.
Okay. When Pouncey came off the field, he was the last guy off the field. Ben was walking around there with him, arm in arm. And nobody had really made an announcement that was going to be it for Pounce. But if you watched him walk off the field, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's it. He's going to be done. Mike gave no indication. I mean, walked off the field like I've seen him walk off the field 100 other times after a loss. Didn't take a lap, didn't do anything different. And so he was keeping it close to the vest. But I definitely think this is something he had come to this decision a while ago.
Yeah, I think it certainly seems that way with the way he's carried it out. And again, he goes out on his own call to send his way out. But now the Steelers have a lot of decisions to make. What do they do now at the coaching position? That's where we go next. We're going to look at some candidates. We're going to look at which side of the ball they could look at. We're going to look at other options, what they do with the rest of the guys they currently have on staff. All that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Gusto. Let's be real, no one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits can save you hours every week. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. One more time, that's gusto.com/LockedOnNFL.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, let's look at what the Steelers coaching search is going to have to start out as now. Looking at how the Steelers have hired coaches, they usually move pretty quickly, usually in this process, and they are again. It's not like we're going off of recency. We're going off of, it's not recency. It's just history because they've only done it 3 times in, the modern history of the NFL. And I guess not even 2 times in the modern history. The modern history starts in 1970. So, their Chuck Noll search was even before that. But Alan, I look at this search and I think there's some interesting choices to go about here, and I'm going to explore this. We're going to explore this a lot more during this coaching search, but I want to start it with this first day of pondering. Should the Steelers be looking for another mold of coach that's like Tomlin, like Cowher, a guy who's a leader of the room before anything else, and more of a defensive guy that tends itself to being leader, or should they try to go for one of these offensive gurus that more and more teams start to lean towards to be their play caller and head coach?
I'm going to answer this question like I'm Art Rooney. Like I'm walking up to the plate and I just hit 3 straight fastballs for home run, and now you want me to look for the curve instead? Like, I just feel like you got to strike out first. Like, you got to at least miss one time with what has been your bread and butter before you get away from it. Like, I don't see how, if I'm Art Rooney, I'm be like, well, the last 3 coaches we hired were 30-something-year-old defensive-minded head coaches, and all 3 of them are either in or going to the Hall of Fame. So let's just do that again, shall we? Like, I mean, look, obviously you can have success other ways, but I mean, I don't see how they don't do. I mean, they will certainly interview other types of candidates, but push comes to shove. If you're asking me to pick a favorite, it's somebody who fits the pattern established before, or at least checks most of those boxes. Maybe it's a defensive-minded head coach who's a fiery motivator, but maybe he's 50 this time, or maybe he only has experience in college and wasn't a coordinator in the NFL like those other guys, or something like that. But I mean, I think the paradigm is pretty well established here.
I think so too. I think when you look at defensive minds, I think that's something that the Steelers have really tied themselves to being. It's part of their identity. I also think, think back, I don't think it's a coincidence all three times they got guys in their 30s. They got guys, younger coaches that could be around for the long term. Wouldn't be shocked if that's part of the considerations in this. I think the first person when we talk about this kind of a moment that comes to mind is Jesse Minter and what he's done with the Chargers defense. He's been able to generate some buzz there. Mike Tomlin praised him earlier in the year, for how the Chargers defense played them. I think a lot of people point to Chris Shula, the Rams defensive coordinator. He's actually in his 30s. Minter's 42, but Shula is 39. Legacy there for the NFL with, being the grandson of Don Shula. I think that there's guys along those lines. And I also feel like the way this team is currently structured, there's something there. But Alan, this is also a team that's invested a lot in its offensive line. There's a chance they could try to go get their franchise quarterback in this draft class. If not this year, you imagine it'd be the year after. But is there any incentive to say this? Hey, you know what? What if we do try to do the thing where we're getting our quarterback soon, so we want that offensive head coach that can do that? Or do you think this is more like we stick to our guns and what's made us the Pittsburgh Steelers for the last 60 years?
Well, I think if you look at who's going to play quarterback this year, which is a conversation that if today's news hadn't happened would certainly be dominating our discussion. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier if you go get Clint Kubiak to feel like, oh, well, maybe you could sign Daniel Jones. Maybe you could trade for Mac Jones. Maybe you could find a way to fix Kyler Murray. I feel like if you do have that sort of quarterback guru guy, that those avenues do become a little bit more realistic for you, or at least a little bit more feasible to succeed than you sound otherwise. So I think that does have a bit of a draw. And certainly why I think a lot of teams go that route. Specifically with Kubiak, I mean, he's already done a bunch of interviews, and he kind of feels like the belle of the ball here in terms of the coaching cycle. And if the Seahawks are playing a long time, that could be difficult for the Steelers to overcome the head start that some other teams have had there. In fact, that's how Kubiak ended up in was it Seattle in the first place, right? Was he interviewed ahead of time and then nobody else could get him. And so I think there's something to be said for that. I just think the Steelers see defense as an essential part of their identity. And you can certainly have a good defense with an offensive head coach, but I could be wrong. I don't see that being the direction that they're going to go. And the other thing is I was thinking about this too. I feel like there are actually more good candidates. Like the hire the next McVay guy thing has been done so many times that those coaching staffs have been so stripped of options that I honestly feel like when I look at the potential coaches of the coordinator types, I think I like the group of men that are the defensive coordinator side of that conversation. It's a lot deeper group. I like a lot more of them. I like Minter. I like Shula. I like Anthony Weaver. I like Vance Joseph. I like maybe Robert Saleh. I think there's a lot of guys in there that you can kind of talk yourself into. Whereas maybe on the offensive side, there's a couple, but it just doesn't feel like it's the same sort of bumper crop.
So that was where I was going to go next. You brought up Robert Saleh. What about the potential of a retread head coach in the NFL? Because that's also something the Steelers haven't done with the last three. All three guys have been, assistants in the NFL. Also, it looks like Marcus Freeman, a guy who I did feel for some years could be a top target for the Steelers, but it seems like by all indications he's sticking with Notre Dame. But what about a Brian Flores or a Robert Saleh? Because those are the two retread defensive-minded coaches that I think poke up the most when you look at the units that they coach. They're also both in their mid-40s.
You could throw Vance Joseph in there too, probably. I think I don't see any reason not to. the NFL is a different place than it was when they hired even Mike Tomlin. Coaches do not get a long leash anymore anywhere except for Pittsburgh, really. And so I do think, back then, especially forget the Cowher conversation or the Tomlin conversation for a second, when they hired Cowher, like in Cowher's day, a retread head coach meant someone who had been given a super long leash and failed. Like that was, and if you did anything in that super long leash, you were a lifer. And so, like, yeah, they haven't had retread head coaches, but there was never a guy like Robert Saleh who was a really good defensive coordinator, went to work for like the world's most backwards franchise, with, by the way, we've seen with Aaron Rodgers and Justin Fields over the last 2 seasons that just failing with the Jets does not mean you're a failure everywhere else. Clearly. That clearly. And so a coach like that didn't exist in 2007 or 1992. So I think it's tough to say, oh, this would be groundbreaking for them. I mean, he's still a relatively young guy. Same with Brian Flores. When you're talking about guys who had 3-year stints in the league, both with franchises with questionable ownership, meddling circumstances, I would not rule out either of those guys just because I've coached before.
I want to talk more about this and what the Steelers could prefer and be looking for, and just the style of how they go about their head coaching search here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you this episode is also brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, and nothing gets missed. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps, so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 business rated phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnfl. That's QUO.com/lockedonnfl. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. We're also brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. That's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule, 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or quick lunches. Recipes are simple but feel elevated, even restaurant quality, with dishes co-created by chefs like Gordon Ramsay. Saves time and money. Home Chef customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. I'm Chris Carter. He's Alan Saunders. Alan, a few things here about the Steelers in the search here. This is Art Rooney's second's first search. It was Dan Rooney who went and got Mike Tomlin and played a big part in the Null search way back in the day. But is there a sense that, there's some people that see Art Rooney too as a different owner than his predecessors, and hey, he's a different person. He comes with a different background. Dan Rooney was very much rooted in the football minded part of things. Art's been more of a, more on the law side of things, on the administrative side of things. Is there a chance that you see that plays a different role in how they go about this search, or do you think he follows the family trend? I know you said they feel like they're going the defensive way, but given that the Steelers may have people looked at them a bit differently under his leadership, is there a different way that he tries to go about this, or is this, is he also going to lean on his front office a bit here and say, like, look at what we're building, what do we do here?
I assume that like Omar Khan will have some kind of role in helping to, cull the list of candidates and things like that. I expect this to be an Art Rooney hire. And I think, like, to me, the fundamental traits of Art Rooney are that he just tries to keep things the same. Like, he's a person who's very in tune with his team's history. He feels as though he is a steward of something that was already great before he acquired it, as opposed to someone whose mandate is to go treading new ground in search of new greatness. And I feel like that's how he's approached owning the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so I just feel like that is, he's a different person, and maybe he likes different personality traits. I think those things are probably a little bit harder to get a feel for. But in terms of, like, if you ask me what Art Rooney's going to do, it's like what Art Rooney thinks his father and grandfather would have done is usually the answer to that question.
That makes sense. I mean, again, I think tradition is a huge part of what's made the Steelers. Also, shout out to my wife. She just sent me this. The first iPhone came out 5 months after Mike Tomlin was hired. That's ridiculous.
We wrote that because a couple of years ago at training camp, he posted an Instagram picture of himself wearing like black Air Forces the morning before practice at training camp.
Very Tomlin.
And then, like, there were like 3 fights at practice that day. And then I was like, Mike Tomlin got to his players by posting an Instagram story. And then I was like, Instagram was invented in 2011 and the iPhone was invented. It was like oh my God. Like, yeah, he's been around longer than both of those things.
He predates the MCU. If you're a Marvel movie fan, I just thought about that too. It's kind of wild, again, just to marvel at this. But we're going to spend a lot more time looking at this coaching search, what they do there. Alan, I think we should take a step back. We've talked about how this happened, but I want to give some chance for you, some runway for you to kind of talk more about just the legacy of Mike Tomlin, where he leaves things in 19 years in Pittsburgh, and just how for some Steelers fans that either did want to see this end or didn't want to see this end, where do you see this coach who I think is headed to the Hall of Fame, parting with this pillar organization of the NFL?
Well, I mean, we'll start there. I mean, I think he's going to the Hall of Fame. I don't think there's any coach that's ever won 150 games in a Super Bowl that isn't in. Am I right about that? I mean, I think he's there for sure. Now inside the top 10, tied with Chuck Noll in wins in Steelers and NFL history. And certainly there's a possibility that he could add to that, as we discussed. I think Mike Tomlin will be remembered fairly fondly in Pittsburgh. I feel like time heals all. There were a lot of people over the course of Bill Cowher's career that wanted him gone, and he's generally revered here at this point. And I think Tomlin won just as much, if not more, than Cowher did. And I also think he served in many ways he was the personality of his teams in a way that I'm not sure even the other two legendary coaches in Steelers history were, in the way that his sayings, his phrases, his style. I think that is what people will remember about him, and I think that's a pretty fun and enduring legacy.
Yeah, that's a good point. The standard is the standard, is the thing that he started, and it's, again, he's been around so long that it feels like it's been around longer than he has. But I think that's a very good point by you. Like, the cliche, all the cliches. I think that's the thing here, is like your favorite time. We're eventually going to do a rank your favorite Tomlinism segment here, because there's a lot of them. But when I just look at how, this career played out at 19 years, and yes, it ends with the last 9 years without being without a playoff win. But I look at just a head coach that came in. There was a lot of questions about what was going to happen with Ben Roethlisberger, with the direction of the team. They were 8-8 the year before. There was a lot of questions with, is Ben Roethlisberger going to, ever get back to, where can he actually play well in the Super Bowl? And then they get, one of the most memorable Super Bowl wins of all time under his watch. They get back to a second one. And then again, just like the era of consistency that this team saw in being able to be competitive every single year. This city has not watched a football game that didn't have significance to it all the way, in any month outside of January. I mean, even that, I think there's been one game.
Games. It was 2 games.
And 2 games in his career that had no impact on playoff hopes that the Steelers have played in those 19 years. I think that there's a lack of appreciation for that in some respects. Some people say, oh, it's blown up way too much, but that's the kind of stuff that, like Aaron Rodgers was saying, it's an absolute joke when people try to make light of it, because that goes into how good and great you are of a coach to always have that many different teams in that consideration, especially when you look at, they still made the playoffs with Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, and Mason Rudolph. They still made the playoffs with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. They brought Aaron Rodgers back to the playoffs. And even before that, when Devlin Hodges, they were able to get to 8-8. That went down to the wire that season. I think that that's something that if the Steelers can get out of another head coach, that would be amazing. But if the time ever comes that Pittsburgh actually struggles and actually sees bad football and it's a really bad season, it's going to be interesting to see how the city takes it, because I haven't seen that since I was in middle school.
Yeah, I think Art Rooney said it pretty well in his statement today that Mike Tomlin's record and accomplishments will never be repeated. Yeah. Never. I mean, no one will ever go 19 seasons in a row without losing. That'll never happen again. Somebody the other day, talking about your point about appreciating what he did, said that the Steelers and Pirates had the same number of playoff wins since 2011. Both have won 3 playoff games since 2011. And I said, that's a pretty good encapsulation of why that is not a particularly good metric for determining what it is like to be a fan of that team, because there are Siberian prison camps that are more enjoyable than being a Pirates fan since 2011. And the Steelers have played 2 meaningless games. The Pirates play more meaningless games before April 15th every year than the Pirates have played in totality. Or the Steelers have played in totality since then. Yeah, the 3 playoff. Yeah, I mean, certainly the lack of playoff success is frustrating, but you can't even remotely begin to tell me those things are, forget the same. Like no sane person would pick the experience of being a Pirates fan over that tenure to watching Mike Tomlin Steelers. There is definitely an underappreciation for the level of greatness it takes to be consistently consistent, even if you never advance beyond that stage.
In my adult life, I've seen the Pirates in the playoffs 3 times.
There you
go. That's pretty much all you need to have there. The Steelers have made the playoffs in the last 3 years as many times.
Yeah, all 3 times. 3 years.
All 3 of the last 3 years, and they had a different quarterback that was not a top 10 quarterback, not a top 15 quarterback each of them years. And that's as many times as I've seen the Pirates in the playoffs in my adult life. That's whenever people compare those two, I think it's that's showing that you're not being objective. It's, again, if you wanted Mike Tomlin gone because you thought, hey, I just think it's time, that's fine. But when you go there, then it's like, okay, now you reaching now. But Alan, it's a closing end to an era, for the Steelers here, but it opens up new doors here for the Steelers. Do you feel, with the nucleus that they've assembled, particularly on the younger side of things, we saw Derek Harmon step up this year, the offensive line, despite the performance of the playoff game, I think this is a really good year for their trajectory. Other young guys stepping up. Keanu Benton had a big sack fumble in the playoff game and played better throughout the second half of the season. Joey Porter Jr. looks like a shutdown cornerback this season. And other guys Davis best. Do you feel like Mike Tomlin leaves this team on an upward trajectory that they have a path to get to, or do you feel like this is a very serious danger zone that this team is in right now? If with how they pick the next head coach.
Well, I don't think it's in a danger zone in that I think it would have to be pretty badly mismanaged for the team to be bad. I just don't know that I see a quick way out of this middle of the road rut they've been in. And I think in many ways, this kind of buys them some runway to just not take their time to get out of it, that they probably were not going to be given by the fan base if they did not make a change significant as replacing the head coach. Because like if the new coach comes in and goes 9-7 or 9-8, 10-7, I'll be like, he's doing great. Rookie head coach. Look at that. I think you can benefit from the expectations of newness as opposed to the expectations of 19 seasons. And then maybe you can hope that Andy and Omar can stack some more draft picks and eventually find their way out of this. But I think anybody who thinks they're changing the coach and then there's a 13-win season hiding under that blanket on the other side is just, I think they're fooling themselves a little bit.
The thing here is that I do feel like there's development going on. And again, this is where I think that one of Mike Tomlin's underspoken strengths has always been is he finds a way to develop cores. When he inherited Cowher's players, he turned them into an elite defense consistent. They were number one in 2000, I think the 2007, 2008, 2010, 2011. It was just insane how often they were the number one defense in the NFL. And again, he added pieces to that to make it that. When that crew aged out, he developed the Killer Bee era, which wasn't just the Killer Bees. They had a killer offensive line. They just never were healthy enough to be in the playoffs. He developed that core. When that core aged out, you had the emergence of the TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward defense that was top 5 for multiple years and then top 10 for several years up until this season. He's always found ways to develop groups and keep pushing things forward. And that's where I think that if he had chosen not to step away, he was developing another one. Like we said, this offensive line, I think, is on a really good trajectory. I like what I see out of Derek Harmon, Keanu Benton, Joey Porter Jr., and I think even other guys like Patrick Queen, who is like 26 years old. He's not old. Guys like Kenneth Gainwell, who they could bring back, for a decent price tag. I think that he has built a nucleus of guys that whoever does inherit this Steelers roster, it's not going to be like, the Cowher one that's coming off the Super Bowl year and 2 years away from that. But there is something here that I think is there for the Steelers to tap into. And that's why I do think it's imperative they get this search right. And I think, like you, I agree, they should be looking for a defensive mind that's more of about a leader of a room, a guy that has a strong voice that can galvanize the team and piece things together the way Mike did behind the scenes.
We'll see what they're able to come up with. I think it's a good group of candidates. Just looking at the sort of, I wrote a story at SteelersNow.com. I broke down 19 candidates. I don't think they're all realistic, but I wanted to get to 19 because it was 19 years, whatever. I think there's a lot of good names on there that would be we're talking about the quarterback situation. You're like, oh, maybe that guy, or maybe there's one, and that's why it looks a little iffy, right? The head coach situation, I think there's a lot of good answers out there. I think there are multiple hires that, if made, I would say that's a good move.
I feel you there. Alan, thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Saunders_PGH on social media. SteelersNow.com is where you can find that column and all the rest of my articles. And my podcast, Steelers Morning Rush and Steelers Afternoon Drive, on the Steelers Now YouTube page or anywhere you find podcasts.
Absolutely. He's Alan Saunders. Alan, thanks for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever you get social media. My handle is always at Carter Critiques. You could read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes. Back here tomorrow as we take more steps into the early parts of this Steelers head coaching search, all right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.